Hello everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Step Tea with Elsayed. Today I have a very special guest, one of my colleagues that we are sharing a lot of activities together in the same department. Our guest today is Dr. Rania Hamza. Dr. Hamza is an associate professor at Civil Engineering Department at TMU. How are you doing, Rania?
Fantastic. How are you?
Still alive. Did you get your step tea or not yet?
Not yet. Waiting for
so
that.
You like step tea? Or
That
what
was
is
the
your favorite
original drink.
Yeah.
So, in our culture, step tea, or we simply call it tea, is the celebration. So we invite people for tea whenever there is a good moment or something to celebrate. On the other hand, coffee is associated with funerals, so it's different than that's different than the North American culture. But when I came to North America, I started to get used to the coffee.
Okay.
And less tea, but steep tea is the original
original celebration
drink.
moment. So you
Exactly.
mentioned that this is for your. What is your culture?
So I was born and raised in Cairo, Egypt,
Okay.
and then I moved to Canada in 2014. August 2014 to be specific. My first entry point was Calgary to do my PhD at the University of Calgary. And I had the second move in 2019 to Ontario, Toronto, to join TMU.
I would say people know that is you maybe joined Alberta at 2014 and TMU at 2019. People want to know more about Rania. That child on the back days, if you want to remember those we'll go back maybe 5-7 years ago. I'm not going to say 10, 15 or 20 years when you were a child. Tell us a little bit about who's Rania, the original Rania, not the Dr. Hamza.
I consider myself a very passionate lifelong learner. I find joy in learning and in teaching what I learned. It was not really a surprise that, to me at least, to continue in academia. So I was a very good student. I liked studying. So I'm not joking when I tell my kids I was very good student. I would say ranked very highly in high school when I was like a student, top 10, and I had very successful, I would say, school years. Although I never liked school. I was very good at school because it was means for me to do something better. I always, I would say, hated the traditional learning approach and having, I would say, the instruction way of having children to sit in desks, and it was kind of killing creativity.
Okay.
But I've always wanted to do good, to be able to make change. So this is one of the things that I've always wanted to do, to really make change in education, to inspire kids and to inspire especially women. I was very lucky that I had very supportive parents. I think I was having more. I have two brothers. I had more privilege than my two brothers, which is something that I would say it was not that common in my culture. But I enjoy learning, and I used to even take very good notes. Everyone in class would want to take my notes, and I would gather my colleagues and my friends, make them sit and instruct them.
Okay.
It's really funny now, but I used to sign my exams, Dr. Rania Hamza, associate professor, even way before I knew where life would take me. And I remember my professors would come and say, "You really need professional help." I was like, "No." I didn't even know that time what assistant was, associate, but I don't know. They will tell me why specifically. I was like, I don't know. I just like how it looks.
So do you want to be a professor or want to be a teacher? On your child? I'm just saying that this is...
No, I've never wanted to be a school teacher. Not because of I didn't like. I just, as I grow, I realized that I really find more influence when I have kind of, I don't want to say older kids, but they're still kids. So teenagers from the age of university education, post-secondary education. I think this is the moment where it actually shaped my life better. I started to see, especially I had the opportunity to go to the American University in Cairo, which had a very, I would say, liberal, interdisciplinary. It shaped my, I would say, career and my personality a lot. I liked and flourished this environment, and I see how it can actually make a difference. This is where I felt I can do something that can make a change.
So there is any inspiration behind that? Somebody inspired you, an event inspired you, or it was just a genetic thing that you born with that?
Well, I was living for, I would say, until my grade 9 with my grandfather.
Okay.
And my grandfather would always joke and tell me, when I tell, like, I'm having an exam today, just please pray for me. And I was like, you're going to be a professor, and sometimes you're going to be a dean. And like, I just joke. So although he was educated, but he just finished high school education, and he was not into academia by any means. But he had like this belief in me, and he was very supportive, and he would even come take me from school, and I would be waiting for him to pick me up to tell him how was my exam. So I think he was a big influence. Even when he passed, I would still remember him, and like I lived with him for a big, I would say, portion of my life, and he was the one that I actually dedicated my PhD dissertation to. So on my first page of my dissertation, it was dedicated. And that's actually where I carry Hamza, because that was his name.
Okay.
So this is where I kept the name Hamza as my family name, but that's actually my very immediate grandfather.
So I was a student during the early study and high school, and I know, because we are from the same background from Egypt, so how it's important, the high school grades. Who was the first person that you told her or him about your grades in the high school? There is someone, I want to really...
I actually got my grade from my Arabic teacher. I used to I still like Arabic, and I like poetry.
Oh.
And I was very good in writing, and like one of the things that I enjoyed. So he called me and to tell me that I was actually one of the top. And so I kind of got my grade a bit earlier, a couple of days earlier. And I don't think it was really a celebration, rather than I was upset that I lost a few marks here and there. So I felt like I was like very upset that why did I lose these marks? And at the time, of course, it was a big deal for me. But now, of course, I look back and laugh, and I was like, how come?
Are you still having that kind of criticizing yourself for not excelling in your activity?
Yes, very critical person, definitely. Very harsh on. I like to challenge myself. This is how if I'm not challenged, I wouldn't be interested to do anything. So the challenge is what keeps me going.
You have kids?
Of course, yeah. You know that because we always chat about them. A big part of me is being a mother. And this is, I would say, I learned from being a mother too many things that I couldn't have learned other way around. So this is a big portion of me that I don't know if I'm the one who's raising them or the one that they're bringing me up, because I learned a lot of things with them, especially teenage and
so but this is what I want to ask about. If you are like criticizing that much and harsh on yourself, you'd be the same thing with the kids. How they are tolerating?
I think that's a good question for them. They have their own personality, and they are very different in personalities compared to me. So
you have a boy and a girl.
I have my daughter. She's in grade 12, and my son is in grade 8. We have very different personalities, very different interests, and none of them wants to be engineer, for example. But I think they have their character of their own. Definitely, or maybe subconsciously, I influence them, but I try not to. But definitely, they have a big part in them that they want to please me as well. So they want to make me proud and
Yes.
yeah, but they are by no means looking to be exact copy of me. They have their own personalities, which I have to say I learned how to work with and accept, because the big thing as parents, especially when you come from a family that value education a lot and look for the highest levels of education, you can also kind of leave a little bit of room for children to explore different routes, especially if they are very different from what I've been pursuing myself.
We always know that it's a working mom is a challenge. So how about a mom that is doing a graduate study? So how it's challenging to do a graduate study, especially the PhD. So how did you see that challenge, and how did you able to manage that, doing your graduate study or PhD while you are being a mom?
The hardest part was taking the decision. It took me so long, actually, to take the decision to start my PhD. I knew from whenever I finished my bachelor that this is something that I wanted to do, but I've always worried about taking the steps. Even my professors that would go on, I was like, oh, you're still here? You haven't gone? Because it's always kind of understood that the best way when you finish your education is to start to explore opportunities abroad, to gain more knowledge and have more opportunities of education. And everybody was surprised that I stayed actually a long time. I started another master's after my first semester, which I didn't finish because I decided that it might be better to move to Canada to do my PhD. But the decision itself, I don't think I can take credit. It was my husband who was actually pushing me to say, well, I just need this push.
Okay.
Because I was more at that time, and I was very attached to my family and my parents and Egypt in general, and I would say I was very happy and in my comfort zone. So I needed this push to leave my comfort zone. So he gave me that push, and we decided to move to Canada. It was hard. But I have to say I was in a much better, I would say, situation compared to other. First of all, language was not a barrier for me, which was good. Culture was not a big barrier as well. It was fine because, and I have to say, being in an American and English-speaking university helped me a lot with that. But the hardest part, as you mentioned, was being a mother. When I moved, my son was less than 2 years and my daughter was 6 years. Daycare was an issue, for example. So Calgary, as you know, is not really a transit city, so snow and cold. I'm not used to the weather. So I don't know where to put my child. So I remember I had to go every day for at least 2-3 hours one way each I was in the north. The first daycare for my son was way in the south, and it was a little bit of a struggle for the first few months. But they gave me the energy. I was like kind of, and then after some times I gained more resilience. I tried to manage my time better and seize every single moment to do work. So every kind of summer, I would send my kids for camps as much as possible and wrap up. I was very efficient in the lab.
I see getting rid of them for
Yes. No.
Not with this
But
way,
I really also wanted to make sure they are doing something that is working for them. And I started to gain more confidence in moving around. I started to drive and be more flexible in terms of kind of finding my way. So, when you're learning something new, it took me like maybe a few months, 6 months to a year to get the hang of it. And I had a very supportive supervisor. He was always encouraging me. And we would go all the time. He would visit us actually at home and we would enjoy meals together. And he was very supportive. Like I remember whenever I'm stressed, I was like, go cook good meal for your family. And I learned how to be efficient, especially in the lab. I work with biological system. It's very time consuming. People would not love it, because of, wastewater is always associated with
How your kids are perceiving that their mom is a professor and working with wastewater?
They give me a poop emoji in my birthday. This is how they perceive it. I'm not sure. I've never asked them. But this is I remember I still have it on my desk and I call it a friend in need. So I have this poop emoji on my birthday because I was always talking about my bugs and feeding my bugs. I need to go to the lab, make sure that the food is available for the bugs before the kids.
Okay.
But I learned how to be efficient. I was the first person to be on campus, do my lab work, and by 2 p.m. I'm done, I'm finished. I go ready to pick my kids. And
so I believe that maybe you need to put a little bit more effort and time explaining to them what you are doing, not just are dealing with pub or bags or something like that.
Yeah.
So if you are not a professor, what career would you take? Or would you imagine yourself?
Other than being a professor.
Yes. Or a teacher.
Yeah. Maybe a singer. I love music. Or something related to fashion or art. I like...
Do you sing?
I used to, not anymore.
Okay.
I used to.
So this is your main hobby, or there is other hobbies that... Or it's not a hobby, it was?
It was, but I would say I practice with my daughter because I think she has the same, she goes to a music school.
Yeah.
So I like opera. I used to sing and they classify me as a soprano.
Okay.
So this is kind of, I like art. I still practice art, I would say, with everything. So I like fashion, I like drawing, I like making things beautiful.
With those hobbies and those, how did you come to the engineering? What take you to that engineering side?
I think it started by, I appreciate beauty and nature.
Okay.
And the environment around me makes a big difference. And one of the things I don't want to say I'm looking for, I don't like making things as a taboo. And part of these things were, first of all, women working in engineering. Second, women working in wastewater. And everybody was like, ooh, wastewater. But it's essentially water. So I'm trying to, I think it's this part in me that's looking into the beauty of wastewater and beauty of the built environment. And this is where we live, and water is a big part of it. Coming from a water-scarce country as well, it was a big part. And the analogy that water has to do with people, I find water is very similar to people and behavior sometimes. And the movement of water is always making me fascinated, like how water moves. Nothing can stop water. Water can jump in hydraulic jump.
Okay.
The movement of water is something that has always been. Egyptian civilization started around the Nile. They started to build dams. Everything is related to civilizations go around water. So
was it clear to you in the high school or before joining the university that okay, I want to be on the engineering side, I want to be on the studying water, or it just came by chance? Or how did the idea of joining the engineering when you were in the high schools?
I was not into joining an engineering. Okay. Actually, I had this, I was doing poetry. I loved most of the subjects. I would say I hadn't had an issue with any of I liked history, for example. I liked languages, I liked writing, but I was more into science-oriented stuff because I like to do things. I learned by seeing, feeling, touching. That's why you can relate now that most of my work is more experimental, because this is how I perceive things, even smelling, touching, feeling. So that brought me into engineering. Specific field, it works by exclusion. I started in computer science. I didn't like sitting on the desks for so long. And I went into electronics. I couldn't appreciate electrons moving in the space. And then by coincidence, I was walking. I attended university when the American University in Cairo was in downtown campus, and there was doing surveying in the rare book library. And I saw these students holding the levels and the total stations and looking into these cameras. So I went and I asked, "What are you doing?" And then they said, "This is surveying." "So what are you doing in surveying?" And I said, "Okay, I'm an electronics major taking course in construction surveying." So I said, I'm going to join a course in construction surveying. And this is what made me switch from electronics engineering to construction engineering. And I love the idea, and it suits my learning, build physical stuff.
Construction engineering.
Construction engineer.
Not environmental engineering.
No, actually, I started construction. So I took steel structures, concrete structure. My capstone was on seismic analysis.
Okay.
And
I'm laughing because I am structural engineer as
yes.
well. So how that switch from, because construction engineering from environmental engineering, they are far away.
Not really, and let me tell you why.
Okay.
Hear me out. So first of all, I have to say my professors, when I was doing my bachelor, I studied, I was more on construction, not structure. So structure was on the capstone project or the thesis project that we have. And my major was focusing, we had two capstone projects. One in a discipline, whether water resources / environmental, which kind of grouped structure, materials, and like concrete, or this is the main, we don't use timber or wood in Egypt because we don't have that. We usually build with steel structures or concrete. And the second capstone was in project management, because this is kind of what we had. So in my capstone, nobody wants to do water. Nobody wants to do it. So we had to be in a group, and we had a group. They call us Fantastic Four because we were very good in working together. So I had to join my group of Fantastic Four in structure. So I was kind of more dragged into doing what I was not looking to do.
Okay.
But I see a relation, and I recall it whenever students would ask me, why do I need to study structure to do environment? And why do I need to know about water to do environment? In one of my courses, I recall it very well. I was given to design a rooftop. And I proposed a panel beam.
Okay.
And the rooftop was carrying a water tank. And usually when you go through your design, you just assume the beam depth and you start to do your calculation, check safety. And then I was like dealing with it as if it's a normal roof, not understanding that it's carrying a water tank and water is heavy. So I assumed a certain depth, it failed, and then iteration, it failed. And then after the exam, I went to the professor very upset. I said, there was something wrong with the question. I said, what would you see on the roof? I said, just a roof. He said, no, it's a water tank. Do you know what's the density of water? And that moment I was like, wow, yes. So yes, to build a structure, you need to understand the application and feeling that water is heavy.
Okay.
It's not just water.
So I would say the capstone project, that's the first introduction to the environmental area where you start to build an interest.
Well, I also took environmental courses. They were not calling wastewater engineering that time. They will call it sanitary engineering. So I studied sanitary, and I was loved with this. Water resources and hydraulics was, I think, my
When
biggest...
was that switch point? Okay, I'm going to focus on environmental or in wastewater.
In my master's, I started focusing on environmental first. Then I started actually with solid waste.
Okay.
And the kick was going through garbage and garbage collection and solid waste management. And also I started to link the social aspect.
Good.
So I remember clearly one of my field trips was to the garbage collector area. And I would saw how they sort garbage and their lives and how they would live and what are their struggles in sorting garbage, what are even the pathogens that they would get to. resorts. I visited resorts in the Red Sea area where they actually do the recycling of rejects, which we call it the garbage of the garbage or the garbage bags, and how to make them like material for low-income housing, like doors, interlocks. My thesis was focused on upcycling. That's the word that we of marble and granite slurry from one of the industrial clusters. And that time, my master supervisor was a pioneer in this area of upcycling and cradle-to-cradle approach. That was kind of very unique at that time, how to upcycle and how to work on this environmental champion, eco-industrial parks, eco-industrial clusters.
I'm still getting surprised because now we're not get to the wastewater yet, because waste management is it's a solid waste. It's not a...
Actually, I when I started my master's, my first topic was reuse of wastewater in irrigation.
Okay.
Using biological processes, and my master supervisor was actually originally from the United States. And when I started, I knew that I'm pregnant, and I said, well, I don't think it's a good idea to work in the lab with bacteria. While I'm pregnant, I will take a mat leave and come back. I came back, this person left, and I had to start a new topic. That was the topic that I got interest into. And then I revived this when I was doing my PhD.
Okay.
So that was like the real, I would say the real start with wastewater, pure
PhD.
wastewater is a PhD.
And you did your PhD here in Canada?
Correct.
Okay, when you came to doing a PhD, it's a long journey with a lot of up and down. As always, we all know that. So definitely during that journey, there is always some good memories and some hard times, that challenges, I would say, you need to go. Do you recall some of those memories that you
Yeah, definitely. I think my PhD journey was very successful, very positive in general. That does not mean that there was hard times, especially when reactors fail, when funding stops, because you need to secure funding, which is a big thing. And I think the best time is like the knowledge that I learned. And the worst is passing of my PhD supervisor just after, maybe 1 week after I graduated. I think that was the biggest shock and sad part. But generally, it was I had a very good team. And late Professor Tay, my PhD supervisor, was actually restarting in Canada. So I was his first PhD student and maybe the only PhD student that he graduated, unfortunately.
So I would say you had a special treatment.
Yes. and he was a very good supervisor, mentor, father, and I still have connection with his family. So his daughter actually visited a couple of years ago, Natalie, and I think I learned a lot from him, even as a person. He was very wise, very supportive, has a fantastic sense of humor and humility. He taught me how to be very humble, and that's one of the big things that I've learned from him is no matter how much knowledge I gain, there's still a lot, and there's always a room for improvement. That's something that he gave me the choice to do things and the freedom, but he also had very high trust and confidence in my capabilities to do things.
Yeah.
But he would not force me to do anything. He would leave me to explore and learn by myself, which was a big thing to me.
I think that is one of the things that is, or you are lucky when you have such a supervisor and mentor that giving you that freedom and giving you a chance to build yourself and your character. So yeah, and I can see in your voice and your words how much you appreciate. And sometimes a supervisor can be a big brother or even a father on that level of thing. while you are talking, you mentioned a failure of your reactor experiment. So just want to tell the graduate student that this is something we all faced. So
Yeah.
do you remember an event or like something that is one day your experiment get failed and you get really stressed and I'm giving up and those kind of sometimes.
Yes, there was one time that they decided to give up, but after 3 years. But the failure was even before that. I was traveling for a conference and I asked one of my colleagues to, I had a big, and I'm short, vertically challenged as they call. So I had a big, actually platform stairs to reach I had a big tank of feed, which I prepare every couple of days. And it was big. It was around 1 meter cube or something like that. And my reactors, I would reach them with this platform steps. And I was asking one of my colleagues to fill my tank because I was away for a conference, which he did. And we set timers and and then I think he forgot to turn off the pump or something like that. And then I came, reactor is empty.
That's...
And I had a flume that will kind of take the waste out, so it was completely gone. So that was kind of maybe after 300 days of operation, something like that. And it was
I can imagine
a big loss for me.
Yeah.
And I can't draw conclusions yet. So this one incident, the other incident when I had not understanding of having bubbles that was actually methane in my reactor and opening a reactor thinking that that's air and started to
this is...
spin. So these are kind of the challenges that were, I would say, again, we laugh now because it's in the past, but at the moment it was a big...
So how was your supervisor reaction when you told him that my system has been failed?
He was very calm, but there was one time that he was always to share a story of somebody whom he used to work with, working in similar system, and he would say that they ended up drinking some cyanides and ending their life. So I would tell my colleagues, look at her eyes. If she's gonna cry, come and tell me.
Oh, okay.
So, but I was good, but I mean, he was kind of more concerned that I would lose patience rather than anything. But he was generally very calm, not stressed at all. It's that's fine.
They went through those things
it's
before,
okay.
so it's
Yeah, exactly. So I was don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be fine.
But it looks like you like the bugs. You treat them like the third kids that you...
Yeah.
So if you want to just have an overview, what are the main research areas that Dr. Rania is interested nowadays or working on?
So I focus mainly on wastewater treatment and particularly the biological process of wastewater because I think it's very natural. We're just using the naturally occurring organisms to break down the organic matter. So definitely some waste, I would call them more benign than others. So the domestic waste is mainly organics and nutrients, which we still need to remove to recover the most important resource of all, which is water. But we also need to recover this valuable material. And, there's lots of valuable energy, phosphorus, polymers even, that we can recover from this waste. But there's also more, I would say, challenging toxic waste that we're facing with increased modernization applications. We all heard about plastics, microplastics, nanoplastics, pharmaceuticals, personal care products, the forever chemical that's everybody's talking about, PFAS, and it's everywhere. So these are kind of the challenging chemicals that we started to see not only in industrial facilities, but also wastewater treatment plants are conveyors. So whatever they receive, they can treat. Traditional treatment or conventional treatment didn't change really from the over 100 years. Activated sludge is celebrated 100 years, 10 years ago. and we're still working with activated sludge. I don't think anybody's driving the same car that was developed in the 1900s. But our systems are, some of them, a majority of them are still based on the same concept. And they were never designed to really treat these new contaminants that we're seeing. And the more modernity that we're having, like everybody wants their, I would say, Gore-Tex or their Teflon pans, that non-stick pans. Everybody likes their, waterproof rain jackets, their stain-repelling women cosmetics. Everybody wants the shiny lipsticks, the nail polish. All these products that we are enjoying are causing issues because we're seeing them more in the environment. So this is where my research is focused on, trying to see how we can, first of all, understand more about their fate in the conventional systems. How are these microorganisms trying to degrade, and to what extent we're removing them? And what are the new technologies and how we can improve the current systems to be able to tackle. And part of my research also understands the need for collaboration and interdisciplinary research. Many of the engineering work is not only focused on engineering. We need to understand the water governance. We need to understand regulations. We need to understand the social impact. So this is where part of my work is to also work with people from social sciences, microbiology, chemistry. All these parts get together.
Looks like you are working on many different topics. So let me catch few words from it, what you just described. Like you mentioned to wastewater treatment versus recovery. So yes, nowadays there is a big transition from wastewater treatment facilities to resource recovery facilities. If you want to explain to the audience what are the key motivation for that transitioning from a treatment to resource recovery? And what is the difference?
Yes, I think the idea itself is not new. It has been there, but it's the public perception that has been changing. So the treatment option is still there. We still need to do treatment. But in this circularity, we're working more towards, we're understanding that the earth has a very limited resource that we all share, but also there is a capacity to assimilate. So in the past, we would say the solution of pollution is dilution. We can't do this anymore. We can't keep, because the earth's assimilation capacity has been reached. So circularity in everything. We're no longer talking about a linear economy. We're talking about a circular economy. And part of it is how can we recover, reuse, upcycle, and wastewater is not different. The idea was, in the past, it was more socially and culturally, and maybe humankind was rejecting the idea that I can extract from a waste material something that I can make use of. Now we're getting more into the real need to recover. And we're understanding that, well, landfill is not, like, we need to understand what goes to the landfill. And just like maybe for those who don't understand, the landfill also have the issues of leaching to the environment, which goes back to us. So we need to limit what we need to send to this, to grave, and understand the idea of going back to cradle, start reusing stuff from, deal with these waste material as new products that we can. So the concept is not really new. It's the application and the more awareness that we're having that started to push this.
So what kind of resources or material that we can recover from the wastewater?
Other than water, which I explained, like 99.9% of the wastewater is water. So, and then we have pollutants X, Mr. X, that we want to remove, this toxic. But these are, like we said, nutrients. So nutrients are plant nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus. So there's a lot of phosphorus, which we can be used as soil amendments or fertilizers, nitrogen as well, or ammonia, energy. You work with anaerobic digestion, and part of many facilities actually can at least, if not generate or can become a positive contributor, net producer with energy, at least can offset the heating, the electricity required for the plants. So energy is a big thing. And there are polymers that we can use in different applications. And there's many sources that actually can reuse the material itself as new adsorbents for removing contaminants. Box is rich with resources.
How your research, or let's say that how Dr. Hamza's research contributing to that resource recovery specifically?
My research focused on technology development. How can we develop a technology, prove the concept that is working in recovery, and look how we can scale up this technology and make it fit within the system. This water resource recovery facility, or WRFF, water resource recovery facility, the new name, the trailblazer, the treatment facility. So where would we fit in this? Because many of these facilities has been built for years and they still have their service life to be for more years. How can we fit in that? How can we optimize the treatment? How we can make the treatment work better, more environmental control, look at the climate, the impact of climate. So cold climate like Canada, how can we fit in this cold climate? Extreme weather conditions, we're all now seeing more the 100 years storm event. Are our facilities ready to adapt to the climate change? It's we're seeing it with the extreme weather conditions.
So you are developing technologies, and I'm aware that you are pioneering the biofilm-based technologies such as aerobic granular sludge, for example. So how is that technology or can improve the wastewater treatment efficiency?
Aerobic granular sludge, and I would say like lay terms, is immobilization of bacteria. So microbial aggregation. Sorry
to cut you, but before you interrupt you, before you continue this one, can you maybe explain to the people, new researchers, what is the difference between granular sludge and maybe flux and maybe biofilm? And
definitely. So in a typical treatment process, we have different, we call them unit operations or unit processes. So some are physical, some are chemical, and some are biological, or a combination. So bigger particles that can settle easily are removed by physical means like screens, bar screens, grit chambers like the sand, the rocks, the pebbles, all the gloves, all the stuff. And then we go through a sedimentation and then a biological treatment. And the main purpose of the biological treatment is to remove the organic material and the nutrients. Within these biological treatments, we have naturally occurring organisms, but we engineer the process. We make sure that we provide them with enough food and enough oxygen, because they are in the biological process in the secondary treatment mainly, although not always. It's an aerobic process, which means the bugs would grow in the presence of oxygen or free oxygen. So bugs start to multiply in a binary fission mode, which is 1 become 2, 2 become 4, and so on. And when they multiply, they start to form flocks, which are still suspended cultures, we call them, because they are in suspension by this aeration mechanism. The problem with this is when particles are in suspension or bugs in the suspension, after that, we need to separate this bugs or this sludge from the treated effluent, which is the clean water that we will have subsequent tertiary treatments like disinfection. When I'm comparing granular activated sludge versus conventional activated sludge, is this formation of aggregates, so particles. So a particle that is very small, flock, and I'm talking about less than maybe 50 microns, very small particles, and we're making them bigger by self-aggregation, without a media, without an attachment. We all see biofilms. If you go to any place where, like next to the sink, a growth of this slime layer, biofilm, bugs will find a way to attach. What I'm working on is mainly making this microbial community aggregate without any media to attach. The benefit of that is now we're having different conditions. Different bugs needs different environment, but they also perform different functions. So some bugs are better in removing organics. Some bugs are actually working, or bacteria working on performing nitrification activities. Some bugs are working on accumulating phosphorus in their cells. So with aggregating different microorganisms together, they form a micro-community, micro-aggregates. So I have different conditions within a single granular particle that is somewhere between 200 microns, maybe up to 1 or 2 millimeters. And that with the bigger particles, they can easily settle. So I can actually separate them easier and in a much shorter time. And with the aggregation, they start to have more of them. So more biomass retention. And I'm thinking of them, these are my soldiers. This is what so I'm having more of very specialized, very active biomass that are aggregated together. People work together better, same teamwork.
So how that is better than the conventional?
It's better in the conditions, first of all, where I'm having different functions. As I mentioned, conventional system can have only, I would say, don't want one type, but one function, which may be removing organics only. They are not good in nitrification and in denitrification, in phosphorus accumulation. When I have different conditions in one single system and one single tank, let's call it, they can perform different functions. So I can treat, first of all, different pollutants. I have more absorption sites, for example, for the new contaminants that we cannot be biodegraded, but they can absorb or stick to, kind of, these. Third, reduction in the footprint. So I now eliminate the need for another secondary clarifier or sedimentation tank to separate, and more capacity. So I can, this word that we use now, intensify, allow to have more treatment, whether in terms of flow or better quality of effluent with less space, resources, tanks, and energy as well. So that's the main, I would say.
I'm curious about that, the micro-contaminant, the different contaminant that can be absorbed or attached to that biofilm, because nowadays people are talking about the PFAS. What that AGS or those technologies has an advantages for, I'm not going to say not going to treat or destroy, but at least holding or separating the PFAS, the PFAS.
Exactly what you've just said. We had some research that my PhD student finished her PhD, and she worked on. She selected certain PFAS compounds from the literature, and we started to work with them. I'm working with Dr. Roxana Suring from chemistry and biology with that. And what we found is AGS had 10 times more absorption capacity compared to activated sludge. So this is very promising. But we need to be careful when we are defining which PFAS, because we have so far 11,000 identified compound of PFAS. Some of them are short chains, some of them are long chains. So there's more affinity and more absorption for the longer chains PFAS, but the shorter chains tend to be soluble. So AGS was very good in capturing the long chain PFAS compounds and immobilizing them. We started to see certain microorganisms that are abundant in the PFAS contaminated wastewater compared to other. It's a big claim to say or claim any biodegradation at the moment, but we are hoping to continue working on, first of all, isolating these microorganisms and try to understand, are they there because they're more tolerant to toxic, or do they perform specific functions that can help us at least cleavage this CF very strong bond?
But for, I would say a typical engineer look at your description of the granular sludge versus the conventional flux, the granular sludge has higher size, which means lower specific surface area compared to the conventional flux. So how do you explain that the high efficiency of attaching or absorbing the PFAS on that granular sludge versus the...
Yes, I really like this question because it's counterintuitive. First of all, this is a porous structure. So you have within this different absorption sites. So the porosity acts. And again, the concept of multiplication is for bugs. So one bacteria cell become two, not one granule become two. So it's more of a sticking. Plus, bacteria, any living organism generate a waste material. For bacteria, they generate what we call extracellular polymeric substances. Part of this is kind of polymers that are sticky in nature. So they also tend to, and they are bacteria defensive mechanism. So in fact, we started to see a spike in the concentration of these bacterial byproducts when we introduce more of this toxic compounds as a defense. Bacteria wants to defend themselves, shield themselves. So this acts more as a trapment or immobilization of this. With the porous structure and more absorption side, again, with normal conventional activated sludge, the maximum concentration would be 3,000 milligram per liter. We were able to maintain up to 20 grams, 20,000. So you have more and porous absorption better, more resilience and retention. So you have more absorption sites in total compared. But when we conducted our experiments, we started to remove the concentration from being a limiting factor. So if we're using 4 grams of activated sludge, we're also using 4 grams of granular activated sludge. But the structure, the porosity, the interconnected channels that we have within the granular structure contributed to increasing the absorption of these toxic compounds to the aerobic granular sludge compared to the activated.
So you would say it's like it's a good technology or compared to the conventional one, and multiple factors. You mentioned that, okay, for the emerging contaminants such as PFAS and even the efficiency, multifunctions. So what are the disadvantages, challenges?
First of all, I would say most, not all, aerobic granular sludge are cultivated in sequencing batch reactors, which require that you will have at least, I would say, a storage or an alternating tanks. Big municipalities prefer continuous flow mechanism because they receive water all the time. Or wastewater all the time. This is number one. And I'm saying most because there are some research and some actually full-scale implementation that has introduced different settling mechanisms to allow for continuous flow operation.
Okay.
This is one. Two, change is really hard, and it requires, there's very good examples of retrofitting or upgrading, but many of the facilities would prefer to build it from a green field or a new, which would need a new facility to be.
Which is very hard to convince the municipalities.
Exactly, and it's it's over 25 years now in practice, but still 25 years in an industry that is still operating with over 100 years. It's hard to do the change.
There is any full-scale facility here in Canada?
No. Not in yet. Canada, but not yet. Hopefully, I think we had a good chance when I was in Calgary to build the first, I would say, demonstration project with the collaboration of the city of Calgary and in the Bonnybrook, and we're trying to revive this. I heard some rumors that there are certain municipalities here in Canada that are studying the feasibility, again, licensing and all these, I would say, issues are playing key role in the.
There is any in the worldwide?
Yeah, there's many plants, and there are a lot of plants in the U.S. Like definitely, they started in Europe, and then they migrated. The other thing is the cultivation. It takes long to cultivate the aerobic granular sludge, and we've worked actually one of the project that I've worked on was actually to develop a technology for fast generation.
Okay.
And we submitted a patent for this along with Calgary Innovates. So they started to kind of in Europe to I would say overcome this by sending seeds from one plant to another. They started this project when they started also to transform to the US, but it was a big journey for the bugs where they had hiccups during the but they were able to recover that. So now it's not a problem anymore because of the proximity. Now we can generally seed from a nearby plant or utilize one of the, I could say, we published this work to fast generate and store even the granules for long period to become active, that we can seed them drying and reactivation. So it's and the nice thing about it is it's also been easy to, I would say, put it together with other technologies like membranes, so hybrid technologies, so aerobic granular sludge membrane bioreactors, or to augment physical chemical processes. So it's very, I would say, I always look at the treatment as a puzzle and a piece in a puzzle that you can start to, so this adaptability is a big thing that we're working on.
Yeah. I'm curious about when you mentioned that you look at wastewater or water in general from different aspects, like beside the technical aspect, that there are some environmental aspect, economic aspect, social aspect, and there is no one can do all of those multidisciplinary expertise by her or himself. So that means there is a kind of collaboration. So how that interdisciplinary research shaped your work, or if you can share with us kind of a collaboration work that you collaborated with others.
Actually, I started learning about emerging contaminants in a discussion with Urban Water TMU, where I'm an executive member, and I started talking with Dr. Kim Gilbride, microbiologist, Patricia Hania from TRSM or water governance, and we started talking about it from different angles. And I learned from them. And for the first time, for example, I understand what is a qualitative research. We've always done quantitative research, do experiment, but what about interviews? What about investigative surveys? And how to understand how to conduct these qualitative research and implement them. So I would hear to not only an operator or a process engineer, I would hear to a regulator. How do they come up with these regulations? And if we don't listen, they cannot come up with regulations, or they would come with regulations that nobody would be able to meet. You need to make sure, when we're passing. So we started this knowledge synthesis project where understanding the knowledge gap and emerging contaminants, and from different lenses, legal, scientific. We even had to look into gray literature and interviewed different stakeholders from all the way from operators, legal scholars, governance people, microbiologists. One time we were interviewing a historian. So we're looking into so many aspects. PFAS, for example, there are low cases on PFAS. So legal scholars are working on this. Social aspects of PFAS, contamination, and how affecting specific vulnerable group. First Nations and contamination in their, we all know, for example, the tragedy of Love Canal. And this hooker company who dumped the waste, and then we started to see. So I would say the beauty of wastewater that it affects everyone. But there are definitely certain communities that's more vulnerable. And with water, we find that women are targeted in this. First of all, in Africa, women are the ones responsible to carry water for kilometers. Women are deprived from going to school to provide the water. In First Nations, there is a whole big water as actually, it was actually announced as a person in the UN because of the meaning that water carries and the environment carries. And I can't speak for the First Nation community, but I mean, there are more understanding that needs to be done, and that's why we need to speak to these people outside the engineering world, because it holds so much more meaning for a mother, for them, because water is more, I'd say, sacred, and the link between women and water is very unique, that I started to understand when I learned how to talk to different disciplines about water and the social implications of water contamination, wastewater.
I think we need a special episode for that, for women in water, because I can see it touches you when you talk about it.
Yeah.
Because, especially as you mentioned, when you talk to people, especially with First Nation, you get really close, and you know those challenges and you read about them. But when you really talk to them and you see this one on reality, this is something.
I attended some of the sessions in the UN on indigenous knowledge and water. I haven't had a chance or the honor to work with First Nation communities yet. I'm very hopeful, but I also want to make sure that it's not what we want, because there's definitely sometimes where we need to provide solutions for a problem, not to force a solution to a problem. So this is one of the things that the traditional way of thinking at problems in environment has been, and this is where communication has helped me understand more. And I'm still learning. I think I learned a lot about wastewater from another lens, which has helped me to understand more what I'm doing and what's the implication. And when I develop a technology, would it actually be applicable to this specific environment? Would it be accepted?
So do you think that the academic society and or the government are doing enough for tackling the sanitation for the First Nation?
Sadly, no.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you, because we heard that is, we are doing our best to some extent, but there are a lot to be done.
Yeah.
So that's one.
But there are barriers that we're trying to work on, but there's also I still think there is lack of communication. Because it's like, if you want to speak to any person, you need to speak their language. So I don't think we still have this common language, and we're getting better, but there is also this, I have to admit, history that is not really, how do I describe this while being, it's not very nice, welcoming history, and this establishment of trust. So we're trying to do reconciliation. Yeah. We're trying to rectify, but it's sometimes hard to rectify something. So that's where it's going to take time. And I think it's our job to prove that.
So I understand that the multidisciplinary research is important and required, but I believe that it's easier to collaborate with other researchers, other professors or academics. But sometimes there are some challenges to collaborate with municipalities or industries. And I would say this is one of the major challenges for the early career professor, which you are one of them. How do you see that kind of collaboration, and how that collaboration impacted your research, both municipalities and industries?
I have to say that I am to a great extent lucky in terms of we have very positive collaboration with Toronto Water, for example. And they're welcoming us, and I actually took some of the capstone group to one of the facilities. We had a tour with their process engineer. We had Eliav and Susan giving us a tour. They are mainly open for collaboration. The problem is always the requirements to have funding, to secure money for graduate students to do the work. So that's really the mechanism of funding is not that I would say easy, especially for because municipalities at the end of the day are very tight because it's a taxpayer money. It's funded by tax, and like utility bills are the ones, so they are very I would say limited in terms of the funding, but they are very open in terms of providing support and education. But also changes are very slow. So it takes years to do upgrades. They are aware of the, I would say, the problems, and they're working to do it, but also these upgrades cost millions. And it's always a challenge to first meet their purpose of existence as a municipality, to meet clean water.
Yep.
And at the same time support researchers and also provide funds, because as you know, our community of, I would say, research, we need to make sure that we secure sufficient funds for funding graduate students, materials, and all this stuff. So there are always ways, but it's becoming more and more challenging with, we've all seen, especially here in Ontario, the budget cuts and funding issues that we have. However, I have to say they're very positive in sharing knowledge and mentoring graduates and undergraduates, and they have always, I would say, open door. We've always spoke to them, and they were always welcoming to mentor students and supervise them as well.
So do you think for us at the academic or professors, are we doing our delegate effort to educate or those people from municipalities and industries about the importance of the research that we are doing?
I also don't think so. I think we need to be more outgoing and outreaching, and it requires a lot of effort to maybe present or at least show them the quality of our work and the quality of our students conducting the work. Yeah, but like it takes, I think, time to build this relationship, but once it's built, I think it will keep.
Okay. What is the most recent research project that you are working on it now? One of them, not couple.
I would say two relatively new projects. So one is related to developing material, nanospun material, along with Brian Kivisto from Cameron Biology and Roxana Suring for PFAS separation. And we're also working, in some of collaborators in the US was using biochar as a new material, which will also enhance absorption of PFAS, but also we're working on destruction of PFAS, hopefully with this new technologies. The other project is integrating algal bacterial granules, and we're hoping that we can also help with capturing CO2 and emissions. And the other one is still related to biofilm, but looking at low DO, which will save us energy, and the impact on low DO applications on nitrous oxide emissions in particular, which are 298 times more potent. They keep almost 300 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So looking at the share of greenhouse gas emission from the biological process in particular, and how the conditions itself in the biological treatment can contribute to emissions.
Okay. I think you are an associate professor, so you are wearing multiple hats. One of them is the research, but there is other hat that you are wearing as an instructor or a teacher. You are teaching classes. How is the teaching in your life?
I always feel or believe that the best way to learn is to teach. And so I learn by teaching, and I teach by learning, and like it's like, and like again, that when I was a kid, as I explained, I was like bringing everyone to explain to them things. This is how I learn, by explaining. So I love teaching, and I relate to the students in many ways because I'm also a learner myself. So I continue to learn, and when I stop learning, I feel I don't think I've ever stopped learning. I'm learning a new thing every single day. And this is something that keeps me going. So one of the biggest things or parts in me is to teach as a way of learning. So I'm always teaching. And I like to make this analogy between a complex process with something that's relatable. Water and people's behavior. Water and settling properties and how people would behave when they are in high concentration, which is like crowded. How water will behave when it's under constraints, like when people are oppressed, versus how people would behave when there is an enlargement or expansion and chaos. So how can I relate these complex things to physical and relatable meanings is something that I enjoy about teaching, because this is the only way I can remember and I recall information by understanding how it feels and how it relates.
Typically, when I meet anyone who's really in love with teaching or have that enthusiasm about teaching, I should ask, how is the teaching in the university before the pandemic and after the pandemic?
I don't think anyone have loved the pandemic, but one of the things that caused a big, I would say, drop in our is online teaching. I hated online teaching.
But it is the future.
This interaction piece is like we're now like, I don't know. I like to come to campus. I like to meet the students. I like to see their interaction is different. And it's this thing that, well, I'm in my office. Somebody's like stopping by today, and I was like, hey, how is this going? And then we start the conversation and I learned something from them. I don't think online would provide that. Or I'm walking by and saw something that's happening in the lab and I stopped to ask. This, even for students, interaction is moments of learning. This can never be, this is irreplaceable. I can convey. I still, by the way, benefit from online teaching. Let's say I'm not feeling well one day and I want to deliver a content. Maybe I can deliver a content, but this is not alone. I have to do another part where I can do this Q&A session. During the pandemic, we all started to find the online labs, which we failed to find. So we started to record our labs and do videos for the labs and even meet them interaction. And I had some funding from the Faculty of Engineering and Architecture Science and Dr. Shaheta on developing this pedagogical project on mastery and blended learning. So we followed these videos and we started to even have questions within embedded and kind of more interactive. I still feel these were, I called it a home lab kit, a pre-lab. So we can watch, but now with this in mind, when students come and learn by doing, this is, I think, triggers another part in their brain. It's not only watching, it's doing and feeling and looking at things that makes, maybe when virtual reality develops faster. But I am a big fan of in-person meetings, learning, interaction is a big part of, we're social beings.
I'm not gonna discuss much, but the future will be for sure for the hybrid mode. So this is going to be more realistic.
It provides some convenience and opens, like again, now I can meet somebody from Europe without traveling, definitely, but to have this exclusive. So maybe as you mentioned, the hybrid mode is very convenient and it opens discussions worldwide as well.
Because you are looking at it from your side as an instructor, and this is the value you want to provide. But there are other challenges from the other side for the students to come to the campus, for time being, for the cost, for many other factors. And some courses, this is their point of view. Okay, we don't really need to come to all the classes. So some of them, to make things like, this is the fact, and this is the renovation technologies knowledge. But let's keep that on the side for now, because So among those hats, so typically you have three hats as a professor: the researcher, and the instructor, and providing some service to the university and or the community. Which hat do you prefer if you want to rank them? There you go.
It's hard. I think they are complementary. I can't separate them. Teaching is complementary to research, is complementary to service, because service is advocating for what you believe in. This is the opportunity to work on, for me, attracting more underrepresented group, achieving real equity, diversity, and inclusion. So they are all linked. I can't really, by our, I would say, conventional way, it's 40-40-20, but I would say they are equal value in terms of...
By the way, you are the first one to give those three equal value, because I would say most of the people say service is the least favorite one for us.
No, because this is the way to, I would say, give back to the community.
Okay.
This is one, and this is my very immediate community, and like TMU or my school or my department, and then I don't think this is what keeps us going, I would say.
I agree with
and
you.
The change that you see and the impact that you see, this moment where I see one of my graduates doing like, you changed my life, you put me in a better, I think that's a very rewarding moment that makes you forget everything that happened, all the stress or the sleepless nights. So I think this is the biggest reward.
So if I put you on a challenge that is for those three, pick one. Let's say, okay, you're gonna take a 6 months, just pick one of those three.
Or if I pick a 6 months, I would just sit down and relax.
This is the first option. Unfortunately, it's not available.
Oh, it's hard to go on. It's hard. It's very hard. I don't know.
Oh, really? To that extent?
Yeah.
So you cannot leave teaching, for example, for a year?
No, because how would I learn? I need to teach.
Okay. Learning can be by a different way. Discussion.
I don't know. I'll teach my kids at home then.
Okay, I'll start to feel for them.
Well, I'm patient with teaching, I think, but with kids, no, I'm which is hard.
So, do you know that our graduates have that misbelief that our life is more relaxing and better than their lives? So, what are the challenges of being a professor?
So, like you said, 3 hats that we're wearing, plus our personal lives, which is still part of us. So, the biggest challenging is finding time to do everything. And for research, the biggest challenge is, first of all, to secure funding for your research, and also to maintain. We work in labs that are make sure that students are safe. Safety is something that's really important. So we make sure that they are safe, they understand what they're doing, they are also happy with what they're doing. In teaching, the challenge, I think, is actually to keep up with the innovations, to keep up with the new ways. Traditional learning is no longer there. We've all heard about AI, and I'm a big fan of integrating AI. I know, what are the tasks that AI can do that I can use and how I can utilize. So
a lot.
Keeping, exactly, and also understanding this screening. Before, we were taught how to screen for credible sources versus non-credible sources. Now everything has become very unprotected and very open. And we need to still understand, when I ask any of these AI tools a question, how reliable is the answer? So integrating and keeping up with the increasingly, I would say, technologically enhanced ways is a big challenge for us to find the time to learn as well and to cope, so that we're not obsolete, we're not teaching skills that are not actually meeting the market. Because these students will all join the market, and you want to make sure that they're equipped with, first of all, beyond the knowledge, the skills. So we're trying to give knowledge, but also give skills to earn more knowledge.
Talking about the AI, because today in the morning I was talking with a friend of mine, and actually they were discussing in the university, like if we can make it officially, the AI can reply to our email. Because replying to your students and through your work email, it has some kind of regulations. So now they want to implement the AI just to directly reply. So just by that, AI has.
I started this new hobby that testing AI. So
Yes.
any task that I do, I still do, and then ask AI to generate it.
Not the vice versa.
No.
Okay.
So I finish doing it, and then whenever I have a time, I start asking AI. It's becoming pretty accurate and pretty better, but there's still things that are totally off or not true or very it's losing the human. There's so many human gestures and so many things that happen that AI still cannot pick. Put any word in a language and then start to give it to AI. In certain times, AI can even put a word that is offending or not good in a certain culture in a meaning that is actually appropriate. So there are still things, it's getting better, definitely. So an auto response, no. A utilization, definitely. I'm
because how far it will go.
It's getting better. It's getting definitely
yeah.
better. I'm thinking it will replace many jobs.
Okay, so let's take you for not a 6 months relaxation, maybe a couple of days relaxation, and you are planning for a nice dinner, and you have the luxury to invite any historical figure or any one from the history that you would love to have a nice lunch or nice dinner and have a chat with her or him. Who would you pick? Oops.
Okay. I'm greedy. I'm going to pick a lunch with Albert Einstein and a dinner with Marie Curie.
That's interesting. And what do you ask them?
Albert Einstein, I would go to Albert Einstein with no prior knowledge to ask how did he discover this bending of light and this kind of curvature.
But he doesn't know. He didn't know. He just do it. So that I heard. He just do it.
Yeah. So he's known for his relativity theory. He discovered other stuff, but like this specifically, because it's changes Isaac Newton's gravity and like how big masses and how massless objects have this not mere forces. This space-time element is a little bit beyond, I think, my physical imagination. For Marie Curie, I would go with today's knowledge because Marie Curie was like, she's the only woman who won 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different fields, like chemistry and physics. She discovered the radioactive elements, which we're using now in cancer treatment for radiation. But she herself died from radiation because of her work on radioactivity. Back then, nobody knew the danger. So maybe I will go with today's knowledge. She lived, I think, like 65, 66 years, but she did 2 Nobel Prizes during her lifetime. So maybe I would ask her to take safety precautions with today's knowledge to live longer, to give more.
Oh.
Yeah. So these are maybe there's so many good figures, but maybe, and their lives overlapped, by the way. So they have so many inventions that I still think it's beyond our. How did they think about this? Is something.
Yeah, one time I was chatting with a friend. I said, I just go and listen. I don't want to ask them. If I got someone, one of those, like Albert Einstein, I can't imagine when I read a little bit about, relative theory, and I couldn't really get it. So I'm just going to sit and just listen to, just talk. I'm not going to ask you anything. But,
True.
Now you are supervising graduate students, postmaster and PhD. What is the first advice you give to your graduate student that joining your team?
I will share what my supervisor told me on the first day. So, first of all, he told me there are two things that nobody can take away from you: your degree and your publication. So he said as I shared, he was very have a very nice sense of humor. So he would say, even if you commit a crime, you'll still be Dr. Hamza, and your publication will still be under your name. Anything can be taken away. So focus on earning your degree, and by earning, working really hard to understand what you're doing. Second is to publish your research. It's the only way to share and learn by sharing. Again, it's your way of teaching, actually. So understanding what you're doing, publishing your research, earning your degree is something that's really important.
What is the difference between earning a degree and just getting a degree?
You need to work for your degree. It's about the knowledge that it's about working to understand something, and especially for PhD, there's a little piece. It's big for a student, but it's small for the world that you need to add. And again, my PhD supervisor used to say, we don't have Isaac Newton anymore. We are not discovering, especially engineering. Well, we still discover new stuff, but I mean, not laws of the universe, but we are discovering or implementing or using applied science, applying science to develop something. So we need to have a contribution. And this is the piece. And this is the only question that I had in my defense from my PhD supervisor. What is your contribution?
Okay.
So earning by understanding, and the big part of understanding is to develop something, you need to understand history. And this is where I ask them to read literature review. This is the history, because we need to understand. And they can publish their literature review. That's a big thing as well, because now you can not only understand, but you can start to have a critical analysis and defining the gap and coming up with the questions. This is where research started. And then you look at your methods and all that stuff. But first of all, you need to define the problem, because if it's working, why we fix it?
Okay. So this is, I would say, it's a generic advice to all the students. But if you have two PhD students, one of them came with a mindset, I want to be a professor in the future. Dr. Hamza, I am joining a PhD to gain my PhD and my ultimate dream to be a professor. And the other ones, Hamza, I want to get a PhD, but I'm pursuing an industrial career. Would be the same advice, or what would you tell each of them to do during their PhD to prepare themselves for the next phase or step?
That's a very good question. So I think more or less the same, but it will be the focus in terms of their skills. So how would they put their skills? So being in academia, I would say my entire career with little industrial breaks, I would say for research, you may be focused more on supervision funding and conveying this part. For the industry, there are some different skills, but both are very well, I would say, they can be grasped from conferences, for example. So exhibition halls and conferences, these interaction that you meet, you will find everything, and then you pick and choose where you would like. Do you want to attend a session for an industrial project where you have more application based, or do you want to go into research where again, even with research, we have more of application applied research, and we have certain stuff that we work on that is more in the call them like TRL levels 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, whatever. So there are some fundamental research that are still not ready yet, which is part of our work, and there is more applied. So people who are more tailored towards industry may focus on the applications and have, I don't want to say less, but may not be that interested. And that goes to picking the topics as well. So when I work with the students, I usually have this discussion of, this is kind of my bigger theme, but we start together developing this specific project and from what angle we want to look at this project, being more application-based or more linking to fundamental research. Again, this is my view. It might be different. But the training itself should be the same, and conferences are nowadays supplying both, I would say, appetites for industry or academia.
Okay, so we're coming now to the last question. And as you know, the young professionals nowadays are going to be the leaders of our future. So if you want to give an advice to the young water professional, so this is your camera. If you look at the camera and give an advice to the young water professional, what would you say?
I would say do what you love, not love what you do, because you need to love what you do and do what you love. So this is the one thing with that, like, don't start anything that you don't like with the hope that you're going to like it in the future. I think start by doing what you like or truly have the passion for. It's nice to have a plan. It's really important to start your career by having, maybe if you're writing a book of many chapters and you start to have maybe every 5 or 10 years of your life, how do you see yourself? This will guide at least your directions of how you're gonna work towards achieving this. Go to conferences, meet people, and present your work even if it's very early. This 3-minute thesis that we see, just really present, getting criticism early enough to in your work will help you shape your work. So don't wait until your final year to present your work. Present your work from the onset of even having an idea, because that will shape and trust your capabilities. And I really think it's a journey that it's in itself enjoyable. So they get to enjoy it as well, and it's not just a degree that you want to rush. Take time and enjoying the journey, because the journey itself is really something that, looking back, I always have memories, mainly good memories to share. So that's mainly how I.
Well said. Thank you so much, Rania, for accepting the invitation and being a guest on my podcast. It was really a pleasure interviewing you. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for following us. And this is the end of our episode for today. And please stay tuned for the next episode. Bye-bye.